in person because you have the benefit of being able to access the speakers live and interact with them via Q&A. So you can be thinking of your questions for Karen here, and I'll introduce her and hand it over to her, and there will be time for Q&A at the end of Karen's talk. So Karen Graves here is a sensory director at Bell Flavors and Fragrances. So natural flavors came up quite a bit in the context of our last speaker's talk, and we have an expert here. So Karen's integrates consumer understanding with the sensory experience to drive insights for the company and its customers. She's passionate about utilizing novel sensory and consumer research techniques that are both cost-effective and meet the needs of a specific project at hand. And she's got 15 years combined experience at Bell Flavors and Kraft Foods prior to that. And she has recently revitalized sensory research at Bell Flavors, and in the past has worked with multi-million-dollar brands like DiGiorno and Kraft Macaroni Cheese and Jell-O, and Philadelphia cream cheese. So Karen is here today to share some brand new research that is consumer insights that is surrounding the derivation of flavors, whether it's natural, artificial, organic, and she has some interesting data talking about to reflect on consumer perceptions of what those terms mean and how that drives their intent to purchase in this case, in the bakery aisle. So I will turn it over to Karen Graves.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. And as mentioned, today I'm going to talk about clean label consumers, who they are, and also what are their perceptions as flavors when they're used as ingredients in bakery items. So to start off with, I'll give you a quick introduction of what sensory insights is and how we use it at Bell Flavors and Fragrances. As you may know, sensory is a scientific discipline that's grounded in the fields of physiology. What's perceived? Is it sweet? Is it salty? Is it milky? Is it buttery? And how intense are those attributes? It also takes into consideration the psychology aspect of foods and how does a product make a consumer feel? Do they like it? Do they hate it? Does it make them feel happy or sad? Or perhaps it reminds them of their grandmother's apple pie. Sensory has standardized methods that are governed by ASTM, and it's all about measuring human reactions to products through any of the five senses. So sensory insights at Bell Flavors and Fragrances is used to integrate those sensory properties and consumer needs to guide and validate creative development and innovation. And so we have a three-pillar approach of what sensory at Bell can offer Bell's customers. So first, we can offer customized research. So Bell Sensory has internal panels. We have a descriptive panel, we have a discrimination panel, and we also have internal employee panels who our sensory team can guide and design customized research to meet your project needs. Bell Sensory also advocates for our customers' consumers. So we want to make sure that our customer and Bell win together in the marketplace. And we want to eventually have a product that tastes good and people are buying over and over again. And lastly, Bell Sensory offers consulting services in the event that you may have an existing sensory department or need some extra help on doing a team tasting or sensory training. So why are we talking about clean label today? We've talked a lot about this category is just exploding in today's marketplace. And the Food Insider Journal noted that in 2015, global clean label sales were at $165 billion, and they're projected to reach $180 billion in 2020. So just seeing some tremendous growth. And the Nielsen company showed that there was an increase in product sales with free-from claims between 2016 and 2017. So there was about an 8% increase with no additives and artificial ingredients, another 8% increase for all natural foods, and then about a 4% increase with products containing the claim nothing artificial. So what is a clean label? So I had a video. We're having some technical difficulties. We can't pull it up. But the intention of the video is to show that there's really not one standardized being that's claiming if it's a clean label or natural. So it can be very confusing for consumers, and consumers are using a lot of front of pack and graphics to make that decision for them. So things like color of the packaging, material of the packaging, graphics, do you use a barn, do you use Farmer John on the front with his pitchfork, does it say natural? All of those things are very important, and they're influencing consumers' perception on whether or not the product is a clean label in their mind. And similar to Rachel's presentation, there are a multitude of examples of what constitutes a clean label. So to start this off, I looked online on what's publicly available research to understand what are some different definitions, and I'll go through a few of those today. So last year, the Hartman Research did some research to understand clean label consumers. And as Rachel mentioned, clean label is a term that we use in the food industry. Consumers are not calling it clean label. In their mind, it's clean food or something else. So this is something that we need to define as an industry. And it encompasses much more than what's listed on the ingredient line. And that they're looking for fresh, less processed foods and beverages. 65% of consumers are saying that they're looking for ingredient lines that have a short list. And 58% of consumers are saying they're looking for ingredients that they can only recognize. And as with natural products, consumers are expecting clean foods to be self-evident. They want to see that it's clean when they're shopping for it on the shelf. And that means that it's uncontaminated, that it's less processed, simple, there's nothing impure added to it, and that the company's being transparent, that they know where the product's coming from, and the company's being forthcoming with its ingredients and practices. So the building blocks of clean label and how consumers are evaluating it to be clean, they're looking at a number of cues. They're looking at what's in it, so they're looking at that ingredient line. How was it made? Again, is it being made by Farmer John, or is it being made in this mass-produced plant? And then who made it? Is it locally grown and owned, or more from a larger company? Also, we saw this research in Rachel's presentation. A literature review was published last year, and I thought this was a really interesting definition for a clean label, where on one side, consumers are inferring a clean label because they're looking at the front of pack. They're focusing on the claims made by any trade associations that are claiming to be natural, organic, non-GMO, or 100% fresh. And on the other side, there's also consumers, and maybe it's the same consumer, that are inspecting the product. So these are the consumers that are pulling the product off the shelf, turning it over, reading the ingredient line to make sure that the ingredient line is short and simple and contains ingredients that they can find in their home kitchen pantry. So here's an example. Both of these ingredients are for yogurt. So you can tell the difference. One on the left, a clean label consumer would instantly reject. It's long, it's got a lot of lines on there, whereas the one on the right is very simple, it has very common ingredients. So this is something that they would gravitate towards. So here's some in-market examples of what is considered to be clean label. And to start, I feel like I really need to mention Skinny Pop Popcorn. This is launched 2010, and I feel like, around 2010, and I feel like they were such a trendsetter. They saw this need for a consumer that they wanted really a plain popcorn. There's 3 ingredients: popcorn, sunflower oil, and salt. And this brand has just been really booming over the years. Safe and Fair is a company that wanted to have tasty, delicious cookies at a fair price that kids could eat if they have severe food allergies. So we're seeing this is from the Free From movement, so it's free from all the allergies, but also on the front you can see it's non-GMO. This product by Food Stores was recently recognized as one of the most innovative products at the Natural Products East Expo. And it's being hailed as revolutionary because it does not have any glyphosates, which right now is under the microscope because it's supposedly an ingredient herbicide, and in California it's known to cause cancer. So this brand is getting a lot of recognition right now in the natural arena. And lastly, here's a product that recently launched in Germany. I believe it's Nur, it's a yogurt product, and there's 2 ingredients, milk and fruit. So that's probably the simplest that I've seen, especially for yogurt. And as Rachel mentioned, not all in-market moves to natural flavors have been successful. So in 2015, Diet Pepsi removed aspartame, and this was not well received by their users. And so quickly, they relaunched the product back with aspartame. And as Rachel mentioned, Trix cereal moved to a natural color, and consumers instantly rejected this idea. And some of the verbatim comments were, "These colors are atrocity." Other comments were, "What happened to my cereal? This looks like a salad." And my favorite comment was, "I actually like the flavor of high fructose corn syrup, an artificial color, bring it back." So, it's funny, I think these brands have some strong brand equity in their appearance and in their flavor that moving to a natural color or flavor wasn't the right fit for them. So they were disappointed. So we as food manufacturers and food ingredient manufacturers, we want to make sure we're delighting our consumers. We want them to be happy with our products, so they're going back to the store and buying them frequently. So this made me think, all right, so there's some successes and there's some not successes. So, I started to look into this, and there was an article in the Food Navigator earlier this year, that mentioned how clean label expectations are category and brand specific. And I tend to agree with that. I think it depends on, are you eating a cereal, are you eating a candy, or are you going for that natural hamburger? And I would add to that, it's also dependent on usage occasion. So if I'm having my sweet fix moment and I have to have something sweet, am I really going to care about getting to a natural or an organic flavor of my food product? Probably not. And I found a Cargill white paper published last year that listed some product categories where consumers tend to be more lenient on their ingredients. And one of those was baked sweet goods. So I thought this was interesting, and as a researcher, I started to ask some questions. So first of all, who are clean label consumers? Let's get a better understanding of clean label consumers, their demographic information, and some of their behaviors and attitudes. And also, as I'm working for a flavor manufacturing company, what do clean label consumers think about flavor ingredients? How are they perceived? We talked a lot in the previous discussion about natural flavors. So what is that perception? And getting them all the way to a category that maybe they're a little bit more lenient. So thinking specifically about baked sweet goods and getting them to think, is this a trade-off? Can we start to get you, more, is an artificial flavor more permissible in this product category? Or maybe a natural and artificial? So Bell Flavors and Fragrances collaborated with Insights Now. They have a clean label enthusiast online community. And we collaborated with them to do some research to better understand these questions and really to get at what are clean label consumers' perceptions on flavors when they're used as ingredients in baked sweet goods. So the first objective was to get at their demographic behaviors and attitudes, but then also to understand how are they reacting to product claims and flavor types in indulgent and breakfast snacking occasions. So again, I purposely picked those two occasions because breakfast and snacking are a very different mindset. So breakfast, we're going for a baked sweet good for a certain reason. They provide a certain kind of need state for a consumer versus a sweet snack. If I'm going to go grab a cookie or a donut for my sweet treat in the afternoon at 3 p.m., I always need that fix, that sweet fix. So how do these trade-offs vary in these different occasions? So here's the list of 7 flavor types that we exposed to consumers. And this list was selected based on how food manufacturers label their flavor ingredients on back of pack. And then here were the list of bakery items that we also presented with consumers. And again, this list was not all-inclusive, but manageable to conduct the research. So the research approach, and as mentioned, this was done in collaboration with Insights Now online panel for clean label enthusiasts. And the first phase was a series of surveys where we had over 4,000 consumers. And this group actually was not just clean label consumers. There was a mix of non-clean label consumers and clean label consumers, because we wanted to compare and contrast what are the differences, where are the points of differences with clean label consumers. The second phase of this research was with specifically clean label enthusiasts, clean label consumers, to get at their perception of claims and flavor ingredients. So first we'll talk about who are clean label consumers. A majority of them are boomers. 41% are born between the years of 1946 and 1964. At first this number was a little surprising, but then when I started to think about this demographic, they're an aging population, so they're turning to food for functionality, for some kind of health benefit. And then, you can't see the numbers there, it's a little small, but 30% was equally represented with Gen X and Millennials, and the lowest demographic was the silent Gen at 3%. About half of the households of clean label enthusiasts have kids between the ages of 6 and 12, and this demographic skews towards females, where the females are doing most or all of the household shopping. And we're also seeing that this clean label enthusiasts are not as prevalent in the lowest income bracket. Clean label enthusiasts are comprised of about 16% of the U.S. population of primary grocery shoppers. This may seem like it's a small number, but we know this number is growing and it's certainly making an impact in the sales today. And you can see that the geographic distribution is fairly equal across the U.S., and it skews slightly higher in the South. So what this is telling me is that clean label is no longer a trend. It's not a trend just happening in California anymore. This is something that's across the U.S., and we as food manufacturers are taking this seriously and taking action to learn more about it. So some things that clean label enthusiasts tend to do and think. So they're reading ingredients, especially on new products. They're turning that product over to look at the ingredient line. They are concerned that food companies are adding too many chemicals or adding impure additions to their foods. And they're also avoid buying brands that they perceive have bad or unhealthy ingredients. And this is telling me that they're pretty brand loyal, so that once they find that brand that they feel like are having healthy ingredients and good ingredients, and that they feel like that food company is working for them, that they're going to be loyal to that brand. Thinking of clean label enthusiast purchase decisions, 83% would trade away taste over a clean label. This number is really high, and it's surprising to me. So to me, it just goes to show that they have their products that they really like, and that they will stick to them. And I think to an extent it has to taste good. You can't eat some grass off the ground or dirt, but it has to be palatable in some respect. But they are really driven by clean label. And about half of these consumers are citing concerns with sustainability. So looking at purchase behavior, 58% are buying fresh produce. So they're not buying frozen, they're not buying canned fruits or vegetables, they're shopping in the fresh produce aisle. 25% are avoiding sweet snacks. So these are probably those houses last night when we were trick-or-treating, they're handing out, they're my favorite because they're handing out a toothbrush. No candy for my kids, a toothbrush. Love it. And 33% are avoiding processed lunch meats. And we are definitely seeing these trends in the grocery stores today and consumer behavior when they're shopping, because we're seeing that consumers are shopping in that perimeter and not going up and down the aisles. So thinking about stores and where clean label enthusiasts shop, we're seeing that clean label enthusiasts shop at a higher number of stores than a non-clean label. So they're averaging 4 stores over 3.1 stores. And this is happening because of that brand loyalty. And clean label consumers have their favorite products at each store. So they're willing to make the trip to several stores to make sure they're getting the products that they like and that they feel like offer a clean label. And we're also seeing that this consumer is shopping more frequently at Costco, Whole Foods, and Trader Joe's. So this consumer may be going to Trader Joe's to go buy their cereal, then they're going to Whole Foods to buy a bakery item, and then going to Costco to buy their meat. So thinking about where clean label enthusiasts are getting their information, this chart is very interesting to me, and it really echoes of some of the stuff Rachel had mentioned earlier. Clean label enthusiasts are looking at food industry watchdogs like Natural News and Food Babe they're looking at them more so than the food brand-owned websites. And this is interesting and concerning because I've seen, several CPG companies have tried to help educate this consumer. I've seen videos coming out from CPG companies like, oh, this is why we have, maybe a dough conditioner, or maybe why we have this stabilizer, and try to provide a rational explanation. However, consumers, clean label enthusiasts, are not trusting this source of information. That they're looking to Natural News and Food Babe or their friends and family for this information. So, some of the questions earlier, it's about this, education, but being careful and mindful of when you collaborate with these folks like Food Babe, once it's out there, it's out there. So, something interesting. All right, so the second part of this was an online survey conducted with Insights Now's clean label enthusiasts. So what happened, we had the clean label enthusiasts were invited to complete a survey on those two occasions, breakfast and snacking, across those 11 product types, so muffins, donuts, coffee cake, and 7 flavor ingredients. Participants were screened based on their purchase history. So we wanted to make sure that people were actually eating and buying products in these categories. Because as mentioned earlier, 25% of clean label enthusiasts are avoiding sweet snacks altogether. So we want to make sure we're talking to consumers who are actually eating it, a cookie or a muffin. And then the survey was completed to get at perception on claims and flavor ingredients. And the question that was asked to get at perceptions was this. This is an example. Thinking about a typical or normal breakfast at home before heading out for the day, when you're eating a muffin, how do you feel about the following ingredient? Natural flavor. Then participants were instructed to select okay or avoid to describe their feeling on each ingredient tested. So then the data was analyzed, and we had just over 100 people for both occasions. And from there, a clean label score was calculated. And this was an implicit measurement to get at how strong they felt about that particular ingredient. So to calculate the clean label score, what we did is we looked at whether or not the participants selected okay or avoid. And then we also looked at the time it took for them to select that measurement. So if it was more than 6 seconds long, it was considered to be a slow response. If it was faster than 6 seconds, it was considered to be a fast response. And then from there, the clean label score was calculated. So the best case scenario would be that you click OK very quickly. And that would be a clean label score of 100. On the other side, the worst case is that everybody clicked avoid very quickly, and this would be a clean label score of 0. So remember, in addition to clean label score, we also looked at perception of product claims. So first we'll talk about the results for product claims. And as expected, claims like natural, organic, GMO-free, clean label, and convenient came out as the top 5 claims for both breakfast bakery and snack bakery items. And it's interesting to see, that if you were to do this research a couple decades ago, the low fat and low fat is pretty low on this list, right? So if this was done a couple of decades ago, that number would probably be higher. So again, starting to see these are really important claims and decision factors for clean label consumers. So now switching to the clean label score. So this is overall clean label scores for breakfast bakery items. And so here you can see natural flavor is numerically the highest ingredient. And you've also got organic certified, and natural flavor with other natural flavors, which is a natural one. So those are the top 4. So what this is telling me is that with clean label consumers and clean label enthusiasts, you don't have to go all the way to an organic or organic certified flavor. And sometimes I think we as CPG companies get caught up in that it has to be so strict, it has to be organic, it has to be organic certified. And that's not necessarily the case for a breakfast bakery item. And it's also interesting to me that the non-GMO flavor was lower. It was number 5 on the list. And something to keep in mind, that could be because of the way it was worded. It said non-GMO flavor. This is how it's labeled on the package, but what this is telling me, it's taking a minute for the consumer to think about it. Remember, this score was calculated on the amount of time it took for them to select their response. So it might have been okay, but they had to think about it. So I don't really know. I have to think about what this flavor means. And as expected, I guess you could expect like natural and artificial flavors were on the very bottom. So next, what we did is we looked at people who said they were users of specific product types. So we have people who are looking at donuts and muffins. These sample sizes are a little small because we're starting to cut the data, but I think you can start to get some directional reads here. So again, natural flavor continues to top the list for donut and muffins, and they're about equal score. And what's interesting is that organic certified and non-GMO flavors appear to have an increased importance for muffins over donuts. And I think this is expected because I think there's a halo perception that muffins are healthy. Though we know as food scientists, they're not a healthy food product, it's not a healthy choice. But still there's a different level of expectation here with the muffins and what type of flavor they would use. And also looking, again, numerically higher, I think, donuts, here you start to see a little bit more permission. Now, granted, it's not a high clean label score, but you're seeing a numerical difference that there is a little slight increase on the donut, the natural and artificial flavor for donuts. Which again, okay, so now you're starting to see they're going for a more unhealthy choice than, in their mind, that natural and artificial may be permissible. So I went out to Whole Foods website to understand, here's like the gold standard. Here's a grocery store that is making, really big on organic, right? They really tout for organic, and they have very strict regulations for food manufacturers to get on shelves. And so I looked at their ingredient line for muffins, and what was interesting to me is it's a natural lemon flavor. It's not organic, all right? It's not artificial. Okay, that's not surprising. But it's not organic. And I think, again, there's an additional cost and time associated with getting to an organic or organic certified flavor that it's not always necessarily worth the trade-off. So now we're going to switch to the snacking indulgent moment. And so we're seeing similar trends where natural, organic, natural lump, and organic certified are on the top of the list, with non-GMO being the number 5 on the list. So again, seeing similar trends. And then now when we break it out to products used in this moment, now we have donuts and muffins, and now cookies were added to the list. And now we have a somewhat readable sample for cookies. And so as expected, seeing natural flavor is really high on that list. Natural lump is also okay, along with organic certified. And we're also seeing that donuts continues to have permission to have permission to an extent to have natural and artificial flavor. So here I looked at in-market products for cookies, because I think cookies tends to be a popular snack. And I looked at products that would, I would think would go very severe, maybe all the way to the organic flavor. But what I found, was surprising with the extent that they're using natural flavors. So the top brand, Enjoy Life, this is a local company that they are free from everything, all the top allergens. There's no gluten, there's none of the most common allergen in their products. And they're using natural flavor. And then the product on the bottom, this is Trader Joe's JoJo's. So it's similar to Oreo. This flavor variety is Neapolitan. And they're also using natural flavors in their cookies. So, here this research was done. I wanted to have consumers, clean label consumers, into that moment, that occasion, where maybe they would be more lenient and permit things like a natural and artificial, or an artificial flavor. Now what we found with these products, with these occasions and these products, that's not necessarily the case. So except for donuts, I think you might be okay in a donut product. But I also think when someone's in the moment, right, when they're really craving for that sweet treat, it's unsure, right? Like maybe they just will reach for it because that crave is really getting to them. And keep in mind too, this was a stated response. This is an online survey. There's no tasting done here. This is based on truly their perception of the flavor ingredient with that product category. So what's next? And next would be to expand learnings to other product categories where clean label consumers pay less attention to ingredients. So I go back to that Cargill white paper published last year. They had listed a few other categories other than baked sweet goods. They had mentioned candy and confections. They had also mentioned non-carbonated beverages and as other product categories where consumers tend to be more lenient in their ingredient selection. Also, I think it would be interesting to investigate other ingredient types and that would be relevant for Bell, like looking at sweetness enhancers or salt replacers to understand consumer perceptions on those types of ingredients. So I invite you all to visit Bell Flavor and Fragrances booth later today at the expo. We're booth number 633. And you can sample some of our delicious samples later today. And I'll open the floor for questions. Yes, Carson.
Hi, question about what if the label enthusiasts have definitions of what natural flavor certified real flavor means?
No, they didn't. This was truly based on what they thought what their internal standard of the flavor was. So the question, right. The question was around using an organic ingredient, and if there's one organic ingredient, does it give almost like a halo effect to the entire product? I think that's a very interesting question. I haven't done research in that area, but I do think that, especially if it's your number one ingredient, I do think there would be an influence of someone's decision in that area. That it's got, let's say, organic wheat, flour or whatever. Yeah, I think certainly could have impact, but I haven't seen any research on that.
Is California leading the determination as far as what clean label is?
I think in this area, California is certainly leading a lot of trends that are happening, expanding nationwide. One that's come up more recently is the straws, right? Like having straws in your drinks. And this was started in California because of, they were citing sustainability concerns. And, I think that's something that's gaining a lot of traction, and we're starting to see even in places in Chicago. So, and I think the next one that's interesting is having water. In California, having a glass of water is actually found, like, you can't get a glass of water at a restaurant anymore without specifically asking for one because of some of the water shortages in California.
So an organic flavor, is it under the same jurisdiction as your other flavors are through the CFR 21's Code of Federal Records, that you have that governing body under the Food and Drug that allows you to add some of these chemicals to the ingredients that are identified as flavors but you don't label on the ingredient tag?
Our regulatory department at Bell Flavors and Fragrances definitely does work with the governing bodies, and we make sure that our flavors meet the certain criteria.
Do you think there will be a push because of the lawsuits against natural flavors to really label out what's in the flavor, to finally get behind that hidden curtain and show this is what's in your natural flavor? Is that going to come?
I think the push will, from a Bell perspective, I think the push will come from our customers with a level of transparency. And I think, how we work is some of our customers come with us to very specific requirements for a natural flavor from a sourcing perspective, like where are raw materials sourced from. Not all of our customers do that. So what I see is an increased customer kind of requirement for natural flavors and that increased transparency.
You had one slide that said 83% of people give up taste for a healthier product. That's just a survey where people are asked as a sensory science. What do you think the real number is?
Right, the real number.
I
So
don't read that number.
it seems very high. So again, this is with that data set of just over 4,000 people. And again, the set of clean label consumers within that 4,000 people. And so, yeah, it does seem really high. And I think because it's a stated benefit, right? So, yeah, of course, I care about clean label. I know I'm talking about clean label. I think that number is probably closer to like 60, 50%. I think
I think it's 20%.
20%. Yeah, it'd be interesting.
I mean, early on, I think there was, people would say they want less salt. Now, people want salt. But I did a lot of sensory testing where we did salt analysis. They said they wanted less salt, but if you put less salt in it, they stored it a lot more.
Yes, yes, agreed, yeah. Correct, yeah, people tend to say they will trade off things that they really want. In the presentation prior, they were saying, we want no salt, no sugar, no anything. But in the end, I do, to an extent, I think taste is king. Unless you are following, like, you've got to these keto, some of these very specific diets who I think you get very accustomed to certain taste profiles. So that could be part of it too.
Did you happen to look at toaster pastries during this study, or?
No, toaster pastries were not included in this.